know who's.
You're in the hall.
Okay, anybody.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. 9 o'clock. Everyone that, someone comes in later, that's okay. Becky, would you please do roll call?
Yes, I would. Rodney, Jody,
Here.
Nikki, Matt, Margaret, Sarah, here, Gail,
Here.
Chuck,
Yep.
and Cora.
Here. Okay, thanks everyone for coming. I know it's an extra meeting, but we're gonna learn a lot today. I'm so pleased that Christina was able to come for this training this morning. Christina and I go back to Oakland County Main Street days. I mean, that was a long time ago. And she was in Ferndale and I was in Lake Orion. Oakland County was the first county-wide Main Street program, and we both qualified, our communities both qualified. So she's done an excellent job in Ferndale over the years. She won the Great American Main Street Award. She was there 15, 16 years in Ferndale. And then she had the challenging job. She worked in Dearborn. She started her own company and she has she'll probably promote this a little bit because she's an independent consultant. She started her own company, but she also took on by contract, the Twin Cities, I guess, of Dearborn.
Twin downtowns.
Twin downtowns. Yeah, and two more diverse downtowns you could not imagine, and manage both their DDA boards and worked for them for a while. She's just recently finished a stint in Birmingham and is focusing more on her company. But the important part for me and the reasons that she's here is because the MDA workshop is in Harbor Springs today and tomorrow. And she's the MDA chair and you've been chair for, I don't know, 4 years? 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
I think. And fortunately, because I was chair before her, but she has done an excellent job with the MDA, strategic planning, everything that she has done, she just turns to gold. She's really done an excellent job. So, very qualified to be here today, and I think we'll learn a lot from her, so.
Great. All right.
Thanks for being here.
No, well, you're welcome. Yeah, thanks for having me. And, I love coming here, as Becky mentioned earlier.
Yes. Go ahead, you say.
I have a second home here. So I'm in Harbor Springs, but Hideaway Valley, right behind Nubs Knob, and we are longtime skiers. So I grew up on Nubs Knob with my parents and finally got lucky enough to finally invest in our second home, and it literally is like almost 50-50 sometimes in terms of where we're at. So, but love being here, and this was a great drive to work this morning. I loved it.
I bet, well, let's move here, it can be a.
Exactly, getting closer.
Soon.
Yeah, very soon. My husband and I keep saying, we're like 6 or 8 years away, right?
You've been saying that.
We have been. Uh-oh.
Keeping that up.
Yeah, we'll probably catch up with it, so here, let me turn that on. Oh, yep, it did. Exactly, it did just that. Well, oops. Oh. There we go. I think we're done.
I think there was one more before it.
Yeah, there's one more before it. I don't know why it's not going.
Are you both clicking?
Yeah, okay,
I think that was the first one.
okay. Let me just make sure. Yep, okay. Now I want to go, it doesn't want to go back.
Don't click too far.
Yeah. Okay, all right, well, we'll see how this goes. Hopefully maybe it'll correct itself. And Becky already gave a great introduction, so I don't need to say a whole lot more, but really, except for the reason why I started my business and my consulting is because I really wanted to help more communities around this state in particular, but beyond, and taking that knowledge that I learned over all these years and bringing it to others, because it's always an evolving process and there's always more people and new people that are coming to the table to be a part of it. And with that, there is a lot of history that goes behind DDAs. And you know, I feel that you have to go back to history to really understand how you can move forward. So with that, I will also say that I have been doing this for over 20 years. It's like been, I think, almost 25 now in terms of downtown management. And I also have a background in public relations, nonprofit management, fundraising. Oh my gosh, I can do fundraising like no other, but I would prefer not to. But I seem to have a really good skill set at that. So today we are going to go over the benefits of downtown management and the value and the role of a downtown management program, as well as just the basics so that we get everybody on the same platform and moving forward and rowing together. Tackling that issue of tax increment financing. What the heck is tax increment financing? As well as board and committee responsibilities. Becky, did everyone receive this ahead of time to it?
Yes,
Remember?
they-
Okay.
Oh, no, they received it this morning.
I think I have to point at it.
Oh, me
I
too.
think it's the problem. I can't just go. All right. So, you know, I started in this business and profession really kind of by happenstance. I was doing nonprofit management for American Heart Association, multiple boards, working with them, fundraising, and living in Ferndale. And at that time, saw that there was a position posted that sounded like something I would do. And I'm like, well, you know what, maybe I'll apply. Well, once I got in, I realized how much I loved it and just really loved downtowns. And what I was finding is that I was able to really make a mark, not only on my own community, but other communities around, and create places that inspire others to do the same. And I think that, as Becky will say, there's never a dull day in the office. You wear so many hats, and as board of directors and committee members, you do the same. You're running businesses, you are residents, you wear all sorts of hats, but you also serve that hat of a board of director member. So for me, it would be kind of helpful, just, I know I already chit-chatted a little bit, but if you can just reintroduce yourself, who you represent, and tell me a little bit about why you're serving. Why did you choose to serve on the DDA board of directors? And I'm gonna start with Sarah.
I'm Sarah. I own the Rocking Horse Cook Company with my dad. And I also live downtown. So when I moved back, I grew up here, but when I moved back a couple of years ago, started working at the store again and lived downtown, I felt like it was the perfect, you know, opportunity to be more a part of downtown. And my dad was one of the first members of a DDA many years ago. So I grew up knowing that it was a thing.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of fun to be in that.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I have a son who, like, he's, you know, he knows everything about downtown management as well, so.
Our dad's fabulous, by the way, and he inspired me too. I was on the chamber board in the early 2000s, and then in 2012, we went to a placemaking meeting in Traverse City, about 10 of us from the community. And I mean, it just those first 4 or 5 things that you talk about right there, to me, mean placemaking. That is always stuck and resonated in my head. And so after 2012, when a few of us went to the conference, we brought back the DDA. It was dormant. And so it's taken us 12 years to get where we're at today. I think the first year our budget was $15,000 from a capture standpoint.
Yeah.
And so I just think placemaking and DDA and downtown all are all the same thing to me. So I'm fascinated by it. And I spent 25 years at the Pier Restaurant as the GM there. So being kind of the central focus in downtown, I thought it was something that I should do.
Right.
And I can't get out of it.
Cora Smith, wait, I own Little Traverse Tile Works downtown. I moved my business here 3 years ago. I grew up down in Grosse Pointe and then split time here. My parents have a house on Third Street. They've moved here full time a couple years ago. But my first job was here. I worked at Yummy's. I spent all my summers working in Harbor Springs. Graduated, ended up in Petoskey and couldn't be happier to have ended up back over here. We live right by the airport and I loved it so much here. I wanted to make it my home. I knew that like from a very young age. And I want to see everyone be able to succeed, businesses be able to succeed and, you know, people being able to live here and, you know, live here year round. For the people that can, you know, it's hard, it's challenging. We have challenging months, but there is a lot of support, which is incredible. I mean, being in Harbor is something that I feel like is so different than being in Petoskey. I don't think I could have made my business succeed. I don't think that there is the community support that we have in Harbor Springs. So anything I can do to help it along.
I'm Gail Brown. So, my husband and I had a cottage up here for many years. I retired in 2022. My husband's already living here because he had to retire before me, or wanted to. I mean, I should say, but I traveled all over, but I was in retail for my whole life, so traveling. So when I retired, I didn't know what to do with myself. I mean, I just walked all the, which I still do. But my husband and I'm the resident member. I live in the CBD. And the opportunity came up to join the board and I jumped on it. I mean, I had to be, you know, approved, but I just love it. And I live in the CBD. So, and retail and history is my passion. So, and I love it.
And we put her right to work.
Joey. I forget that.
It's like downtown is your yard.
Yeah, exactly.
It's your yard. All these businesses.
It's a great yard to have.
I'm Chuck Kramers and I've been in retail my entire career. Most of it was always on the corporate side. And then my wife and I have been coming up here since '82 and had property and stuff. Then we both retired and we got quite bored. And this opportunity came up to buy into the business of Finishing Touch, which is downtown here, right in the middle. And so it was kind of a new concept for us a little bit as far as being on the retail side, but what a better place than here to do it. Just everyone's so friendly and it's easy and very supportive, however we want to look at it. But so we opened the store a year and a half ago. The thing I like about retail is I love to get people to spend their money at my place versus going somewhere else. And so I was hoping to use a little bit of that as maybe why I can add to the DDA. You know, in my career, nothing was more exciting than to do some marketing and get people to come into your business and have the parking lot full and a line at the front door when you open. So they're turning right into your place instead of left into your competitor's place, that kind of mentality. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, good. Well, as you can see, a lot of similarities, but also a lot of different reasons too. And that's the value of a board of directors, is that you all bring different perspectives that hopefully, you know, provide a real robust conversation around the table when you're debating those big issues and thinking about the future as well, developing those strategic plans as to where you're going. And that's why boards work, because everyone then can have a voice. And I want to emphasize that as board of directors, make sure you are, you know, voicing your opinion as well as your knowledge, your expertise, and sharing that with others, because that's what will make you very successful. So one thing I just wanted to do real quick, notepad, is just ask if there's any specific question before I start going into the presentation that you want to learn or walk away with today.
Everything that's on your PowerPoint.
All right, okay.
Right.
Anything else that might not be in there? You know, there's a lot of things between the lines, right?
Well, think about that and then maybe at the end, if there's something that, you know.
Yep, definitely, and I'll jot it down, because also there might be something that I can follow up with if it's, you know, something very specific that we might need to get into more detail on after the fact.
I have one.
Sure.
I have what I think to be a big one in our small town, and maybe it's not an abnormal thing. I think we struggle between those that are not working any longer, retired or have moved up here, and the working community. We struggle between, there was always a big joke about, don't tell everybody our secret in Harbor Springs, you know, about Harbor Springs. We don't want anybody else here.
Mhm.
It's too crowded in the summertime. So there's the business community of all of us that say, yes, we
We
need
need people.
whatever we need to do to bring people here on season, off season, year round. And they push back a little from
Mhm.
locals and people that want it to be a quaint little town, and they still want to go to Chuck's Place and shop at Cora's and the Rocking Horse, and they want to eat at the pier, but they really don't understand
That we're here year round.
Mhm.
that we are here year round, and that majority of us wouldn't be here if we didn't have
The tourism.
July, August, and September, or June,
Exactly.
July, and August, however you want to look at it. Is that fair?
Tourism is your prime industry.
Right.
I mean, you can't ignore that. If it were to go away, what would happen, right? Deterioration. And that's exactly what a DDA is here for, is to prevent deterioration.
And we're not a natural, I mean, we're a destination. You have to be coming here. You're not just typically traveling
passing
through Harbor
through.
Springs.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to the Tunnel of Trees.
Yeah, which is the fall, which is nice.
Which is-
Now we have a whole nother season.
We do.
A whole nother shoulder season that's full of full weekends that,
Yes,
I mean, I know our business for one is jam packed on the weekends in the fall, all due to that, which is
Mhm.
amazing. It
Yeah.
really has shifted our shoulder seasons.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I see, obviously there's a significant drop off with April, May, right? That is always a struggle, but it's also an opportunity for businesses to kind of do things kind of like around the house, right? Around the business that they need to get done and cleaned up and
That's all they need.
reorganized, right? Exactly. Sometimes you need those little breaks. But as a business, you need to be able to manage your cash flow. So, how are you structured? Are your businesses, educated on how to balance that, especially your new businesses who might be starting up, understanding how that flow happens. And that's where, you as, maybe senior businesses, those who've been in business for a while, is to take somebody under your wing a little bit and make sure that they know and they understand some of those things. And that's, as a DDA, I think that's our duty, is to help to train others to be prepared for that. And what is this market, and understanding who and what your market audience really is. While, residents might not want, more people coming in, I think, the more you can share your message about how important that tourism industry is to the overall health of the downtown, the businesses, the community. I think that's gonna need to be some of the messaging. It's just turning off on me, or what's going on here? So, all right, so we'll see. Or you might be clicking. So, but I think in the end, I think taking that passion that you have for why you are a part of this downtown, and sharing that and spreading that with others. It's very important to, show how, your love for the downtown is here to really help your downtown, and that you need others to, you want others to fall in love, right, with your community. And I think there's a lot of people that have fallen in love with your community. So you don't have a whole problem with that, but it's falling in love also with the idea of what's needed for the community to be able to continue to sustain the, you know, really what I would say is the glory that is here. So we'll go into some of the benefits of downtown management. Oops, yeah. We'll see if it maybe catches up with itself. I don't know, maybe the batteries are not working on, or maybe this thing's not working so well. So looking at the people that you affect property owners. You have direct impact with property owners, businesses, residents, obviously our district as a whole, because you're representing the whole district, not just single businesses. You represent the whole of that district. But you also have an impact, an ancillary impact on the other areas of your community. If your downtown isn't healthy and thriving, the appendages will start to fall off, because a lot of the energy goes into the center. It's just like a body. It goes right from the heart. It starts here, and from there, your fingers work, your feet work, right? So it helps to strengthen everyone around you. Downtowns and DDAs, whether you're a DDA or another form of a downtown management board, you have a lot of impact within the community. I have a laundry list of what some of those things are, and there's plenty more than what's on this list here. But one thing that's really important to note is that nationally, looking at the investment made by a downtown organization, that $1 of investment spurs over $40 of reinvestment from private businesses and individuals. And that's huge. That's what helps to continue to sustain and grow your downtown. And, you know, looking at a number of these things on the list, I think, you know, importantly, you're creating jobs. So if your businesses are going out of business, you're losing jobs. That's not helping your long-term residents, right? So I think those are things to be able to kind of point to and say, this is what we're doing and how we.
Can I ask a question really quick? How is that calculated? Like, I mean, that's just a fascinating number. Those are fascinating numbers to me. So like, I just was wondering, I mean, obviously it's probably unique. Obviously
So-
average probably. Because
Yeah, it's an average.
It's just interesting to think how
Yes, so through the National Main Street Center, they actually collect information from all states across the US.
Okay.
And the individual reporting is done by the downtowns that report up to their state Main Street organization. And they report it then to the national. So it's an aggregate from all that. So yes, it does absolutely vary.
Okay.
You may have a much larger number potentially, right? So those are also things that I'll say is data is so important. If you're able to collect the data, even if it's just getting a handful of your businesses to kind of talk about like what are their, you know, what are their overall sales or what's their overall growth. A lot of times they, you know, businesses don't want to talk about how much did we make this year, right? But how much did you grow? Did you grow by 1%, 10%, 20%, or did you lose money this year, right? And obviously during COVID, there was a lot of issues during that, and everyone's now ramping back up. You know, obviously during COVID, I think there was also a little bit of a difference between downstate and upstate too. Where downstate, a lot of businesses were losing a lot of money. Upstate businesses were actually starting to make more money because people were coming up north, right? And getting away from kind of the mass groups of people. So it's interesting to see how that dynamic shifts and making sure that you're taking a look at that information, sharing that information, utilizing it in your plans as to how you grow as well. All right, so your role as a DDA really boils down to these couple of goals. So improving the quality of life, creating that sense of place, that placemaking. As Jody had mentioned, attracting and retaining residents, businesses, and talent. Those are all important things for a community and your downtown, as well as spurring private investment, as well as increasing. With that, it increases your property values and the values of properties around the area. And those are all good things that not only for the DDA, but for your city as a whole. Your goal is to continue to improve that property value. And you do not want to see deterioration. In the DDA law is to prevent deterioration. Plain and simple. And whatever that looks like for your community might be different from other communities. But I think most communities, and speaking from the MDA perspective, most communities start with just that core value of preventing deterioration. For you, it would be not losing businesses, not losing tourism, because tourism will make you lose businesses, right? So I think still going back to those thoughts as to really what is your role as a DDA, keeping these main goals in mind. Wow, that worked that. Okay, that was very. There's a number of ways that DDAs do it. And that is, with infrastructure improvements, design programs, creating public space for everyone to gather, as well as revitalizing either vacant or maybe historic properties and underutilized properties as well. Looking at mixed use and housing that might be needed within your downtown, or even that can support the downtown within the area, and being supportive of those measures, because I do know that obviously that middle housing which is like your workforce housing, is a challenge here, right? It's a challenge in a lot of communities, though. You're not alone. It just looks a little bit differently from city to city. And especially because costs of buying a home these days has gone up exponentially.
Like, just to clarify, it's not even like low income housing. It's just like the housing for everyone, college graduates,
Yep.
educated people, every single
Yep.
person who's working.
Yeah, we call it workforce
Yeah.
housing because people get offended when you say affordable housing. But
Well,
affordable to me is like market. Could I get like market rate that I can afford?
Well, I mean, yeah, in 6 years, I bought and sold a house for twice the value. I mean, it's.
Exactly.
So-
It is insane. It is. And I'll say it's like we were lucky to get the place that we did here when we did,
Yeah,
because we would not be able to do it now.
yeah. We want nothing more than to rent our house. We have a 5-bedroom house. We want nothing more than to move and rent, but we can't find a house
Yeah.
that we can afford. It's not
Yeah.
under $500,000.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a real struggle for.
For a lot of people,
all
it's, yeah, I mean, it was
Yeah.
a struggle when I graduated college 12 years ago, when we moved back here, and we were living in some really dingy places. Just because there was nowhere to live. I mean, and now I know it's even worse. So, and I do know, I've talked to a lot of people across the country who similar communities, larger, smaller, it's definitely a huge problem.
And it's, for a DDA, it's identifying, what are some of your key issues that maybe you can have an impact on. To help to set what your strategy is moving forward. And, a number of other things, obviously, marketing, promotions, that's always, kind of at the forefront for everybody, but it's the behind the scenes that I think that DDAs have a lot of impact and making sure that people know that you're the organization making that impact. And if you're partnering with other organizations or with the city on something in particular, make sure you bring your partners along with you and you acknowledge your partners. All right, so let's go into the basics of DDA, the DDA powers. We'll go into tax increment financing, and then also other tools that might be available for you and things to kind of keep in mind with the Public Act 57, which is what created DDAs. So DDA, we have so many acronyms in this world. Downtown Development Authority. It's not an association, it's an authority. You are an authority over a very specified boundary that was defined and created through your city via an ordinance by utilizing Public Act 57. And Public Act 57 used to be Public Act 197, but they consolidated a lot of the similar acts and updated those. How long was that back then? 10 years?
10 years.
Probably 10 years, I think. With, I think, with good results. But I will also say that the MDA was kind of at the table when those things were happening, because there were some challenges that were facing DDAs, where there were some legislators that were hoping to get rid of DDAs. And I think that would have been catastrophic for the state of Michigan overall. So
Can I
glad
ask-
that we saved that, yeah.
Where Becky came from, they called it the Downtown Management Board.
Yes, so a
You
different,
you didn't have a DDA.
Well, we had a DDA,
Yes.
but it didn't collect any TIF. They never put the capture on.
they
So-
never put the TIF plan.
Right, so we just met twice a year later because that became the legislation. But, and because there was no money to do anything with. But the DDA founded the DMB, the Downtown Management Board, which managed the special assessment that you all have, and it also, that we have.
Uh-huh.
And it also managed the parking fund. And they were
Which is
able-
where the majority of the money came from.
That's where, yeah.
And without any of those funds,
It
you wouldn't have been,
There would have been.
there would have been
nothing.
no point.
Right.
Okay,
Mhm.
so are there other,
There are
are
other
there
types-
totally?
There's other types of organizations that manage downtown. So, you know, in this instance, you have DDAs, you have, again, acronyms, PSDs, Principal Shopping Districts, which have a very similar basis, but they're funded differently, right? They're funded through a special assessment. And those special assessments can look different from city to city. There are also, there's Main Street, which is purely nonprofit. So a nonprofit management board that came together to say, hey, we need to do something about our downtown, right? There's also what are called BIDs, Business Improvement Districts, that are formed. And they have the ability to also do an assessment. And a lot of times bids were used a little bit more for like maintenance purposes, security programs. But they're all very similar. It's really that in the state of Michigan, when they created this act a number of years ago, it was because our downtowns were dying. And we needed to do something about the deterioration that was happening. So the state put that in place to give cities a tool to really help to rethink and focus on the downtown specifically.
So you can have more than one. I believe Boyne City, doesn't Boyne City have a DDA and the Main Street Association?
Yes,
A lot of
so,
them have both of that.
Yep.
That's how a lot of main streets are funded.
Okay,
yeah, no, you can.
And
You can
we
speak.
are also DDA / PSD.
right.
Okay, so
You
we're-
have a PSC in place as well, yep. Yeah, they can be overlapping. And boards can have the same people on them, but they are still separate boards, right, that manage those things, those specific items, but you might all meet together. So when I was in Dearborn, we had 2 DDAs. They were about 3 miles apart. And in my role going there was to get them working together. Because they were so separated, they actually functioned completely separate from each other, barely ever worked with each other. Definitely didn't have good things to say about each other. And my goal was to pull it all together and bring those forces to realize that what you were doing was really helping the whole community. And, you know, by all of us working together, it will be a stronger community overall.
How'd that
So
work for you?
It worked great.
It did?
It did. I was there for 7 years and it was a little tough at the beginning. But in the end, both of those boards, I was able to get both of those boards actually holding their meetings jointly every single month. And that way we could see what each other were working on, how we actually intertwined. We had joint committees. It was a way to really, I think, break down a lot of the barriers that were there, and which also helped to kind of build bridges for the rest of the community as well. So, and I think those are things where it's like, if you have other boards, like Main Street, so a lot of DDAs take on Main Street as basically an organizational framework to run their DDA. And it's a really good framework. I will promote that all day long, but not every community uses it. And you don't have to, but there's a lot of good things to learn from it that you can utilize to help you be more organized and thinking about how you really plan and do your work around downtown. So I'm happy to kind of talk a little bit more about that, but let's.
But you do have to keep up with certification on Main Street, don't you?
You do,
Just-
you do. And they do an accreditation program. Just because you don't make accreditation doesn't mean that you're kicked out of the program, though. It means you're still working on it. It's a working organization is what I want to call it, because you're always working to just be better and be more efficient and effective with what you're doing. So so DDA boards, I'm just gonna move along, but for DDA boards, as I mentioned, as members, you have to think about what's in the best interest of your district. Not about individual businesses, not about individual properties, but what's in the best interest of your whole district. DDA boards are appointed by the mayor and approved by council or a commission, whatever you might have. As well as you are responsible as a board of managing the funds that directly come into your DDA and into your fund. It's a separate fund. It's a special revenue fund of a city. And that's why you are an authority. You are responsible for really what happens within the downtown. You do have to follow the Open Meetings Act. It's no fun, I know. But you gotta do it. So, and I can answer questions on the Open Meetings Act as well if you have any. And, just remember that, across the state, boards may look a little bit different, but they all have kind of the same basis. You're going to typically have somewhere between a 9 and 12 member board of directors as a general rule of thumb. So now it's just working anytime I use it. Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between DDA and tax increment financing. TIF, the other acronym that we love to use. So DDAs administer the economic growth and the plans for the district, whereas tax increment financing is your funding tool. It's a financing tool. It's one of your tools. It's not the only one that you have. Obviously, you have the PSD in place as well. That's another financing tool to help the downtown area. One thing to note is that TIF boundaries and DDA boundaries could be different depending on how they're established, or they might be the exact same footprint. And I don't know, what, are you the exact same footprint here? Okay, okay. Sometimes I have to go into that a little bit for other communities because it's a challenge. I've had it in both of my communities that I've worked for. And it creates various nuances that can be challenging. So the different type of fundings that are available for DDAs, you can collect donations. You obviously receive tax increment financing. you can borrow money. There's also money that you could generate through property development, or if you're leasing, if you own a property and you're leasing it. And other licensed operations, as well as through other sources. Obviously, you may get funding potentially like through the city for projects in particular. So, you know, making sure that one thing is very clear is that you don't want to be commingling funds. Commingling is not good. You want to be very specific about how those funds that you have are being utilized. And then, and I know that Becky has plans to kind of help to break that out a little bit more in terms of how you're managing those funds. Because we did have a little bit of conversation based upon your TIF plan and what was approved at the county level and that agreement that you have in place. So now I didn't go into a whole lot of detail on the agreement in particular. And I'm happy to kind of look at that a little bit further. But you know, my one recommendation based upon the language that's in the agreement is to make sure that the funds that you are collecting through tax increment financing are very specifically hitting upon your TIF plan, that they are going to the projects that are defined within your TIF plan. You can always amend your TIF plan, and I'll get to that, but you know, there obviously there's a lot of steps to that. Do know that, you know, the funds that you do collect in any case need to be deposited into your fund, not into other funds. There have been challenges across the state in terms of, you know, how those funds eventually get into a DDA, and just be on it and be aware, so that we are good stewards of those funds that are rightfully the DDAs. I really do encourage DDAs in particular, because they tend to rely just on tax increment financing, is to begin to diversify your funds. And we go back to that point earlier where we were having challenges with the state when they were recodifying those laws and pulling those together, where DDAs could potentially be eliminated. And what would you do? What would you do if you lose all that funding? And then how are you managing and supporting your downtown collectively as a group? So, you know, make sure that you're looking at all of your opportunities for funding, you know, whether it's grants and donations to a 2 mil levy. Do you collect the 2 mil levy?
We do not.
Oh, okay. So that might also be an opportunity as well. And then, you know, obviously, you're going to have your tax increment financing be a large part of it. But if you begin to diversify, you don't become quite as dependent. Also, those additional funds that you bring in go to the things that maybe tax increment financing can't go to. So that's another way to kind of look at your budgeting. Going back to what tax increment financing really is, and simplest form that I always say is that there's a base year that is set, and from there you collect the additional funds that are generated from that. So that base year. So in what was it?
2014.
2014. Okay, let's say in 2014, a property owner is paying $1,000 in taxes, and it goes out to all the various taxing jurisdictions. Now, let's say for instance, it's paying $1,500. That $500 difference is what you're collecting to reinvest. Okay, that's kind of the simplest way of doing it. But the more that you collect, the more you invest, the more you increase your property values, the more that you'll begin to collect. And it's a circle.
Quick question.
Yeah.
My understanding is that if we didn't capture that, it would go to the county.
It would
It wouldn't
yeah.
stay in the community. It would not be able to be, if the DDA didn't exist, we wouldn't be able to collect it.
A portion is county, a portion is city, and the city is saying, yes, do this because we want these dollars to be focused on the downtown area.
But if the DDA didn't exist, we wouldn't, those dollars would just go
They
back to
would,
the
they
county.
would go, they would, you know, a portion of those dollars that are collected. And I don't know what your proportionate rate is, but it could be like 30%, 40%.
I think about a third is from the city, so a third would go back in the general fund, maybe 40%, but then about 30 to 40% would go into county, then the rest goes cemetery, school. So
The other.
So most, about, over half we wouldn't collect over half.
Okay, yeah.
So important to
That was, I just
know,
wanna make sure that's how I understand
yeah,
it, so.
important to know for the taxpayers. They would still be paying that 1,500.
Yep,
It's not increasing their taxes, and I think that's probably one of the most
right, absolutely,
misunderstood.
yes. It's one of the biggest
Yeah,
misconceptions.
where it's going. Yeah, the tax-
Absolutely.
Right.
Right, got it.
Yeah, and those dollars would be walking out of your community
Yeah,
and spent somewhere else,
yeah,
right?
opposed to directly in our,
Yep.
1.3
Yep,
square miles.
exactly.
Not even in our city, that right downtown, so.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I always challenged, you know, the county in the sense that, well, what are you then doing in the downtown with those dollars if this were to leave, right? So we're the best stewards of these funds because this is what we need for our downtown. We know because we're here, we're local. We have that kind of precision insight into what is necessary to continue to grow and really make everyone else prosper as well. Again, back to that scenario, if you're helping that core area, you're helping everything else around it. It grows everything else around it. The county's gonna benefit from the other growth that happens around it. I do a little bit of the calculation in terms of tax increment financing. Do you have in place like a Headley override or do you still have Headley?
That failed twice when we went to vote, so we don't have had.
That's too bad. Sorry to hear that. Because, you know, Headley does keep, you know, your taxable value, down, right? It's when properties turn over and sell that that is uncapped. And you're able to tax more as a city, as a county on that property.
Anyone who's bought a house know all about that.
Oh, yeah, exactly, right? You're like, wait a minute, they were paying how much? Now I'm paying.
Yeah, I did my research when I was buying it.
Right, exactly. So I won't go into the details of this. It is pretty much, you know, spelled out as it is, on that slide. But do know that, you know, there is an importance about having properties turn over at a point in time, especially blighted ones, deteriorated ones, those who've been maybe sitting around for 20, 30 years and not really doing anything, not doing anything in your downtown at that time, nor doing anything to help your downtown for the future because it's not growing.
Does the Headley need to be approved by the citizens of this, the vote? the
Yeah,
voting?
an override would need to be.
An override.
Yes, yeah. And you know, the reason why the state did that, back in the day is because, you know, they didn't want to lose residents to other states. So they were really trying to protect the state. It was a good idea, but it has been around for so long, it's now become really bad for the state as a whole in terms of growth. You know, a lot of other states don't have that same rule in place. And, you know, I think that it personally, I feel like it's time for a change, but each city is handling it on its own right now until there's maybe a larger push, at a statewide level. The other thing to keep in mind is personal property taxes, now exempt. Businesses, are able to file for that exemption. DDAs and cities are no longer, collecting those who have filed. However, because of this loss, the state of Michigan put in place the LCSA, the Local Community Stabilization Act. And had dollars that they would then reimburse the city and the DDAs for its loss of that capture for a period of time. I don't know if you guys are still collecting any at this point or not, do you know?
I think we might.
You'd get a check basically from the state on it.
I think we are. I can check with Nick later, confirm.
Okay, yeah,
I don't think it's a lot though.
it might not be a lot now, it's been a number of years, I think boy, it's probably been 8 to 10 years that that's been in place, so.
Check it
Yeah,
out.
so just important notes that, it's like every dollar counts. It helps you, especially when you're, a newer DDA and still growing, right? And trying to grow that capture. So going back to like what you capture, and I think it would be really good if you were to provide your list of what this is for the board of directors. But typically, there are a number, kind of statewide, what we're looking at is obviously some of those city elements and then those county elements. And in Southeast Michigan, we also are capturing SMART, which is the public transportation. And then when there were some changes a long time ago to the law, it included the DIA and the Detroit Zoo, but that quickly got turned around because that was not the intent of the change in the law. And DDAs do not capture that. Most DDAs do not capture school district anymore either. Those were part of earlier amendments to DDA law as well. So,
Christina, I checked our budget, we get about 5,000 a year for the LSCA.
oh, okay, yeah,
It's small.
yeah, it's small,
But some.
it's small, but it's something, yeah, exactly. I don't think,
Why did they pick, why the DIA and the Detroit Zoo? Just because they were such large?
well, and it was actually written as other taxing authorities. And because the DIA and the zoo were then beginning to capture a tax.
Which is probably just like the cemetery.
Yeah, exactly. They initiated a new tax to help to support those two places. I mean, very important places. But the intent was not then the DDAs to capture that portion. So they kind of annexed that out. So, yeah.
That happened really quick.
It did. It was like within I don't know, I would say 9 to 12 months at the latest that got turned around. There was an instance where one of the communities had already captured some of it, and that kind of what spurred it. It alerted everybody like, oh, wait a minute, this is not what we meant to do. So, and a little bit more about how DDAs and tax increment financing differs. So as I mentioned before, DDAs and TIFs can have different boundaries. So one that could look differently in terms of your boundary. You can alter or amend your boundaries, but one thing I will say, if you alter your TIF boundary, that will change your base year. It would basically reset your base year. So don't ever change your TIF boundary. If you ever change your DDA boundary, do that separately and just the DDA and make it very clear. You're gonna have to have a much harder conversation with the county on that so that they understand it. I did that in Ferndale, and it was a significant process, but then, in the end, they definitely supported it, but we were not looking to capture tax increment financing in those other areas. So you can also have multiple TIF plans. So for instance, if you expanded your boundaries outside of your current TIF area and you set a new TIF area for that expansion area, that's possible. You can have multiple TIF plans for a DDA. Going back to like plan adoption and amendments, couple things that are on here, but it's important to note that you do have to follow the process for public hearing and making sure that you give the taxing authorities a reasonable opportunity to have a conversation, potentially object. But I think the most important thing you can do is have pre-conversations with them before you enter into holding a public hearing. Talk with those who are in the economic development department of the county to have those conversations or to begin those conversations early on. Going further into, adoption and or amendment, these are just a couple of steps just to note. But you have to have 20 to 40 days out doing these various notifications. And one thing that I always like at the bottom is, I like to say, is a failure of a property taxpayer to receive the notice shall not invalidate the proceedings. Because typically when you're sending those out, and I know I did, I sent out certified mail. Yep, I made sure. I didn't want anyone knocking at the door and going, hey, I didn't get that thing. Because how many times do you send out communications and somebody goes, oh, I didn't get that. Oh my gosh. Too many times, right? But what you can do, as I mentioned before, alter the DDA boundaries, but keep it separate from your TIF. You can create those secondary TIF boundaries. You can enter into agreements with adjoining municipalities or townships or other authorities. You can also, as you have, is enter into agreement with county as well as even with the municipality itself. So separate from what is just a typical standard for how tax increment financing works in terms of the year capture, you could have a separate agreement as to maybe a variation on that. So which, you've gone through that process, you've done that. The other thing to keep in mind is library millages prior to 2017 can be exempt from its portion of tax capture, but a lot of times we work with libraries ahead of time to make sure that we still are, because libraries are in the downtown, we're reinvesting, and what are the things that can help to support the library with your plan as well. Oh, I did note in there, make sure you check the duration of your current plan. I know yours is very new, but really keep that in mind that if you're looking to do amendments to it and extend that duration of that plan, that you give yourself enough ample time to do that. I always say at least 2 years, but you can amend your plan at any point in time. If you want to add more projects in, you can add more projects in. You don't have to amend every single part of your plan, just components if you need to.
Still needs to be approved by city council.
Oh, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And when you do those amendments, you have to follow this process for notification. You have to run through that same process. So, I wouldn't be going and amending your plan often. I would, but take
Sending certified mail, you're gonna run it down pretty quickly.
Exactly. So, definitely, do it, take a look at them, keep an eye on your TIF plans. That TIF plan should be a working document for you, keeping you on track, but, looking at it every 5 years to kind of say, hey, is there anything else that we need to kind of add in here? And then you have that conversation.
Christina, can I
yeah.
just add something? I think you mentioned it earlier. I think that's why revenue diversification is important, because if you want to do projects that are not on your TIF plan, and if you don't have the funds from other sources, then you either can't do the project or you have to amend your TIF plan. But if you have those other sources,
Yep.
You don't really have to worry about amending your TIF plan, because you can just use that TIF money for those projects and then that other money for.
Designate what those funds are going towards, right?
Fortunately, our plan is, I don't want to say it's written vaguely, but it's broad, and a lot of things we would want to do fit into it.
Mhm.
And we're at the beginning of it, and there's lots of work to be done before.
Yeah.
But we have to write that TIF plan every 4 years.
Mhm.
No, this one, we had to rewrite, you guys had to rewrite it because it expired.
Sorry. And now
That's why it was only a 4-year
Is
because
it your
was
principal
new.
shopping district that it has
but
to?
now we're 15-year.
Yes.
Got it.
15. What about your principal shopping district?
I don't know about that.
Okay. That would be another one to kind of look at. What's the expiration date on that one? A lot of times those are like, those are approved by council.
Yeah.
It can be done with the tax roll every year, but you don't want to be changing your rate. That, probably that frequently. You don't want to be changing it every year. But, re-looking, at that PSD rate, potentially every 5 years is a good idea because obviously the market changes too.
Well, this is something I've been talking to Nick about, and I've talked to you about this before too. In Petoskey, they renewed that the special assessment every single year, and it was so many public meetings, it was just so
A lot of work.
onerous. It's a lot of work. But you said in Birmingham, you didn't do it every year.
No, 4
And-
years.
And I guess it's been the same here since they started it. It's
Okay.
$1 a day.
Okay.
And so I don't know, that could be looked at again too, so.
That is something that the DDA boards have kind of dabbled into before, but never really closely. But it's a good point.
And maybe what you take a look at is, what are you utilizing those PSD dollars for? And, what's the budget you really need, right? So, and kind of back into that a little bit. A couple other things I want to note on here is that you can do business incubators as well as identify catalyst development projects in your tax increment financing plan. Silence those phones. And catalyst projects do have to be approved by the Michigan Strategic Fund. The other little caveat I always love too is amendments not approved or rejected within 45 days of submission for approval shall be considered approved. And thank you. So if they don't get moving and do their approval, it's approved.
Sweet.
Give an example of a catalyst project.
Well, actually this picture, I know it's a little bit dark on this one screen, a little bit clearer on this one. But this was in Dearborn. It was basically almost like a 2-block development. We had a lot of vacancies within those 2 blocks and for Ford Land, which is part of, it's the real estate arm of Ford Motor Company. And, Dearborn's the home Ford. They actually bought up those 2 blocks and put in this development, which is, a couple of stories, retail on the main floor and offices up above for Ford employees. And that definitely was a catalyst project because now what you see happening in and around the area was a huge improvement and they definitely received strategic funding dollars as well to that. So there's additional dollars that can be had when doing those projects. Yeah, so if there's something that's really going to say catalyze what you need within the district, it might be something to consider as part of your TIF plan. The other thing to keep in mind is that if you have over 100 residents in your DDA boundary, not the city, obviously, in your boundary, then you need to form a citizen advisory council. And this helps when you're then doing amendments or adoptions of plans. But also I really say to use it as a best practice to keep them engaged throughout the life of your DDA. Have a meeting once a year with them to kind of talk about what's needed as residents within the district and making sure that you're hearing those voices and considering that as part of your planning process.
We don't have 100 residents.
I was gonna say, I'm trying to think, like, you guys and other people, there's like,
5 people in this room. No.
well, I was like trying to think, I'm like, the other people by Thomas Moms, and I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
There's a few residents up top, I think.
top,
Yeah.
there's a few.
There's a few
But I don't know if
by
I'd
you
say
guys.
residents.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
So we can't really have, I mean, I'm thinking that this would be a great idea. I mean,
And maybe you do something that's just more
Maybe we do one
ad
thing.
hoc, yeah.
Yeah.
well, and we did do that one at Holy Childhood.
Well,
And we
yeah, but
brought
also,
together-
even what we did at the pier the one time where we brought
Yes,
members of the public, we could also have that
yes.
be further to residents of the CBD. the 10, maybe. Because I mean, but I mean, whether or not, you know, even if there's property owners, that would just be interesting. I don't know, I think it'd be nice to have.
I mean, our lone non-director comes to all the meetings and she's not just coming to be a face, because I know that she's paying attention to absolutely everything and she wants to be very educated on it. And I think Karen will be a great, you know, someone to sit on an advisory board. 'Cause
Yeah.
I also know that she can look at both sides. She weighs both sides. Am I correct? I mean,
Yes.
that's a,
Christina, though, that's Citizen Advisory Council, but it's comprised of residents within that district.
Within the district,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so not to say no to
No.
Karen, but I mean, so we have a very few people who live there.
I mean, like, yeah, probably 10.
Yeah.
But
But
there
you
could
said-
be seasonal work.
It could be an ad hoc.
yeah,
Ad hoc means
yeah,
inventive,
yeah,
Or, do you have other committees?
yes.
Yes, so there's another way to engage those residents that live here is to get them involved on the committees you have. Your committees don't have to be made up of just board members or business owners. Because, you know, you have to remember all of your audiences, right? And who all do you affect? And I think probably maybe as a goal, you might be considering, okay, if we need more workforce housing, maybe there is opportunity for more workforce housing right in the downtown area where the people are gonna be working, right? Who the heck wouldn't want to be able to just walk to their, walk to their place of business?
I know a few
Could we
people like
add
that. Ran into one of them yesterday. I was like, that's so cool. Like, that's just so cool
Yeah.
that you just live, I mean, living downtown in an area. I mean, old apartment.
Yes,
It's just
yeah.
pretty cool.
Could we just add a committee that was a citizens committee?
I think it's up to the board, whether, you know, you feel like you have that need and that desire to do that. And I think as a board, you could take a look at that. The one thing I would also state, the difference between a committee and maybe like an ad hoc committee is really the powers of those committees, right? And making sure you're very clear about the intent of what that committee is there for and what they have the capabilities to do. We can probably, you know, maybe dive into that like at a later point, some of those nuances. But the other thing to keep in mind is that any committee that's running, you need to be OMA as well. You need to be following the Open Meetings Act. You need to be taking minutes and notes and making sure that those are publicly available as well. And I know that's a lot more work to keep those notes, but you can keep notes simple and short, and just make sure that they're publicly available. Okay.
I mean, because that's what I was thinking is like even doing like what we did with Pier, but open it to everyone and just be like, who wants, you know, what do you want to see downtown? You know, the questions we asked, we only had like 3 non-members in attendance for it.
Right.
I mean, and it was a great, I mean, the 3 people that came that own businesses downtown had great things to say. I mean, some things were things we couldn't change, you know, we have to have trash cans on the streets. So things like that, and we, you know, have to have some bike racks, but it was like, a lot of things were brought up that were really great and did help us with our TIF plan and going forward.
But it also answered their question. Why
Absolutely,
we
it was just
couldn't, and that's the most.
opposed to like when we sit here, we don't answer public comment questions.
Correct.
So we, you know, to everyone, we take it in and then, you know, unfortunately we meet a month later. But, I mean, I think that doing something like that where it's, you know, open to whoever wants to come, we will answer any questions you have, or we will get back to you if we can't answer you right away. But I just think that like something like that where it's like, we want your insight, we want your ideas. You know, we can't necessarily make all of them happen, but they go on a list, you know?
Having a meeting like that once a year that's.
It was such a
that's
great,
fine.
I loved the meeting we had, even though no one came. It was.
I have a solution very soon for you here.
Okay.
So one thing I want to state, before I go into the powers of the DDA through Public Act 57 is that any questions you have about whether or not you can do something, what is it? Always refer back to the Public Act 57. might not always be super clear to understand, okay? I get it.
It's like a lot of
It's-
public acts.
yeah,
and city
exactly.
Ordinances. and
But if you
things.
read it at least 10 to 20 times, you'll figure it out eventually.
Or call Christina.
Or call
I
me,
have
or call me. Call me. A lot of times, like the questions that come through the Michigan Downtown Association from our other members, those are getting funneled to me.
Yeah.
To
Well, and her
answer.
husband's an attorney.
Yeah, exactly. So like any like interpretation issues I have, I always go, honey. What do you think this says? So, okay, to kind of break this down and you wouldn't be able to fit this all on one slide, so it's multiple slides. But this is like literally from the Public Act, so that you can keep it handy if you ever want to refer back to it. But you're here to, you know, prepare analysis of economic changes taking place in the district, study and analyze the impact, and then plan for what's needed, right? But you can plan and propose construction, renovation, repair, remodeling, all sorts of stuff for buildings, existing buildings, public facilities within your district, and even housing as well. As I mentioned about public facilities being in your district that you can impact, you can also make changes in order to make them barrier-free design. And as I've mentioned a number of times, you're preventing deterioration. So you can develop, and you should develop long-range plans. Your TIF plan is one of them, but you should also have a strategic plan in place as to how you're going to help to grow the economy. These are all specifically things within the act. If anyone ever from the audience or questions from residents or outside of residents, right? You're here for economic growth. That is what you're here for. And then obviously implementing any plan in the development plan, you can make and enter into contracts that are necessary to exercise your powers and duties. And that's like any contracts. So there's been questions. Can you enter into a contract to, we've had, you know, so I was a contractor for Dearborn. There was people questioning, well, don't they need to be employed? No, they don't need to be employed. They could be a contractor. So there's been questions about that. There's been questions about other types of contracts, but you are the authority as to what contracts you need to enter into. You can purchase and own property. And as mentioned, you can also lease and gather income from that, improve land and reconstruct. You can fix and charge and collect fees. Rents, of course, is one of them, but you can do that as well. You can lease any building or property or any part of it, accepting grants and donations. So going back to your revenue, making sure that you're diversified in your revenue. Acquire public facilities within the district. Again, key is in the district. There has been some DDAs that have invested in public facilities outside of the district, and that's a big old no-no. That's a big red flag at the state level. Do not do that. And then obviously creating and operating marketing initiatives that benefits the general marketing of the downtown district and retail, okay? You can establish broadband service, wireless technology. These are some things that have been added over time as, you know, as these technologies and different things have come into place. You can operate a loan fund program, so like a revolving loan program. You can also have grants that you disperse as well to help improve properties. Those are all things that you should have in your TIF plan in order to be able to do that, or some general language that specifies that. Even if it's just going back to stating at the law level, we have the the ability to do these loan programs and grant programs. And then a newer one in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years was creating retail incubators, business incubators. And there's some very specific language to that. I won't go into the fine detail, but you can read that on your slide. And last but not least, as part of your duties, you have to report. This was part of that whole recodification. And making sure that you're adhering to the reporting requirements. So specifically, your website should hold all of your records and documents so that people can find those. All right. You have to hold 2 information sessions per year. Great opportunity to bring in those residents, right? Get everybody to the table, get all your businesses to the table, get property owners, but you can have other people come to the table. And making sure that when you're holding those information sessions, you're notifying your other taxing authorities, the county, if it's a cemetery, any of those other ones, that they're notified and they have the opportunity to come and hear what you have to say. And we structured it around of like, here's some of the successes that we've had so far, like this last year, as well as here's our plans moving forward. We always use it as an opportunity to kind of speak to the things that we're working on, but always going back and tooting our own horns and saying, here's what we've helped and what we've done. You do have 180 days to file your physical report. In that little right-hand corner is the actual physical report that needs to be submitted, as well as a more a lengthy, I think, say dissertation of your successes and projects and programs and what you're working towards as well. That report can be found at the Treasury. Our contact at the Treasury is there. Email him anytime with questions. He does respond. It is not like he is focused on this, so he does respond. He comes to our MDA meetings as well and provides an overview of that. So this is a sample of the additional report that I prepared for downtown Dearborn. And it's DDAs. These are just a couple pages of it. Sorry, I guess I didn't sign the drawing. Like somebody, or somebody. I don't recognize that number. I miss you. Oops. But again, when does your fiscal year end or begin?
It's
Calendar.
calendar.
So you have 180 days from your calendar, at the end of the calendar year, then to submit your report.
And
So-
I did talk to Nick about this and he said they have been doing it.
Oh, okay.
That part, we're up to date on.
Okay, good. But I really like doing like this additional report to really capture all the great stuff that's happening and kind of like the basis of kind of like who and what is your district. And that could be like an annual report that you do, that you prepare as part of this, but it's also an annual report that you can share with a lot of others. Do you have a brownfield? No. Okay. Well, we will skip through that, but but one thing I will say, if there was a brownfield in place and if there was a project that was looking for they capture tax increment financing. However, DDAs and their TIF areas, they are the primary TIF. Brownfields are on top of that. So any brownfield board would have to get approval from the DDA board to be able to utilize those tax dollars for that redevelopment project. So just know that if that were to ever be the case, you are the primary. All right, we're gonna get into board key responsibilities. And just remember that it's governance versus management. You're here to govern, your director's here to manage. There's a good difference between that. You're here to, set policy, procedures, approve things, whereas your manager is here to manage the day-to-day and work directly. They work for the board, but work directly with the chair. We don't need to have 12 bosses for one person.
Although I've been there.
Yeah. And we'll get to that in a moment too, in terms of chain of command. But you're really here to set the organizational direction, setting those goals and the plans to get there, engaging the community. You are fiscally responsible, so you are fiscally responsible for those budgets. But I think as a director, I always felt that my job was to make sure that you truly understood the budget and the expense reports that were coming in. To be as transparent about all the aspects of those budgets. Be a cheerleader for your downtown. And you have the power to really influence others. And, that's what I expect of my board of directors, is to bring that influence to the table and bring others to the table to help bring your mission to the forefront. You do have to keep an eye on a lot of balls. And they're all bouncing different times and places too. But kind of a laundry list of all the things that you need to do as a board of director. And I won't read through these, but I already mentioned a number of them, but fundraising could be a part of your role as well as then, committee oversight as a board. So if you have committees, are your committees reporting back up to you? And are they following the direction as to where you're going?
Back on what you were just about, bringing people. I think one of our greatest, over the last 10 years, I would say our greatest accomplishments as a city, truthfully, is that we're now, the chamber's working with the DDA, is working with the city, is working with the planning commission and the Parks and Rec, and
That's great to have the partnerships,
as
right?
as one of our old city managers used to say when we'd show up at meetings, he'd say, "Oh, the usual suspects." And it was, but I think, wouldn't you guys agree that no matter if it's an event, whatever it might be, we're always either sponsoring each other, as in I can volunteer, I can help, I can do whatever, and we even sponsor the chamber for certain things to get our name out there. And I think that when I spoke with Jim Bowman, who was the chamber director in Boyne City, when Boyne really pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and really started doing a good job. And I called to congratulate him because he got a front page article in the Harbor Light News. Not that that's all that hard, but and I called him and he said, "Oh, no, is not me. It was the DDA, the Main Street, the chamber, the city, and the cool city at the time." And he said, we've all been working, that the key to it is that we all work together. And
Together.
Boyne City was really, we shut down a restaurant there in 2000. And if we literally would have shut the doors, locked it, and reopened again 10 years later, we would have had a vital revenue source right there with what Boyne City did. And I think
Totally reinvented themselves. He called that team boy.
Yeah, which I think that the important thing is that that's not what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to reinvent anything. We're just
No.
trying to all work together to keep moving forward and to keep, everyone
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
But some things may be small
Yeah,
aspects,
small
maybe
aspects.
reinventing.
We're not trying to
Yes.
do a Boyne City because we don't, we've never been there. We haven't been, anyone knows
Done
Boyne City
that.
from
Yeah.
10, 15, 20 years
Right.
ago. It's a very different place. It's amazing. I love going there now. But for the same reasons that I think people love coming here, I love going down there to see their music in the streets, all the things that they do. And like, I think they do Friday nights. I know people who do both, like they'll come Thursdays in
Yeah.
Harbor. Or
Yeah.
down to Boyne City, because it's just a nice place to be
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, you're
Stories
providing a
about it.
reason for people to come here, right?
Exactly.
And that in turn makes, they're spending money, and that's what you need in
Yeah,
order to keep your businesses, not just happy,
yeah.
but in business.
And on, different nights, not necessarily just the weekend nights, like on different nights throughout the week, which I know the chamber's been good at sponsoring too, so.
So in terms of your role as a board, going back to is, determining your mission, your vision, your goals, the strategy moving forward, hiring that executive director, developing budgets, raising money, it kind of speaks to all those things, but advocating for your local program is a big part of your role and making sure that you're always representing. You're gonna have that hat, you're gonna need to switch gears sometimes when you're out in the community and representing the message of the board. The other thing that I would say is that when there are actions at the board level, and let's say it is a 60-40, 70-30 vote on an item. Not everyone agreed on the item, but it still passed. As a board and as a board member, you have to represent the action that was taken. It was supported. This is what we're moving forward on. Don't interject your opinion that you thought that was a bad idea, because all that does is degrades the value of your organization. I cannot stress that enough. I've had a couple sit downs with some board members in the past, and when they realized what they really did, they were like, oh, like taken back. And then they realized that I need to step up my game and making sure that I'm really that cheerleader, that representative of my organization. Checks and balances, though that fiduciary responsibility, I cannot emphasize that enough. You have your reporting. There's usually annual audits. Sometimes those are in conjunction with the city, sometimes they're, separate. But you can do both, as well, if you ever feel like you need a separate audit. They're expensive, but it's good to do it with the city. It's easier, generally a lot less expensive.
They're coming next week, so.
Exactly. So, plan and raise funds and friends. Still, again, about bringing people to the table, bringing that collective power to the table. It will help you to really not only make your goals, but help them be a part of those goals. I think it's an important conversation you've been having about engaging people in what you're doing, because as soon as you kind of, separate yourself from that, that's when the problems happen. You have to be a very transparent and inclusive organization to really sustain your organization. For individual board members, we want you to be active and engaged in the program. Give your time, your knowledge, your money, access to money if you don't have money. Bring your friend who has money to the table. But also there's, labor, helping out at events. Don't let Becky be the only one there.
There's a lot of labor expended in the last couple of weeks.
Physically planting.
Exactly. Attend, obviously have good attendance at your board meetings, because I'm sure in your bylaws, you have an attendance policy, right? And also attend trainings. Yay! You have attended a training. So, but continue doing that. Continue informing yourself and growing the knowledge you have in order to really grow your downtown. And then I will, because you do wear so many hats as it is, don't wear more than 2 hats within the DDA organization itself. Try not to. You're already a board member. That's 1 hat. And then you probably need to serve on a committee, right?
And right now, they're all board members on committees. And
Okay.
I want to kind of look at that. There might be other people in downtown that would like to
Yep.
sit on committees as well, but we just
Yep.
reestablished the committees there was no one in the position for a while, so.
Yeah. And, and when
Or
you're
an
doing,
interim, there was an interim.
right, and if you're serving on 2 or 3 other committees plus the board, I mean, that's a lot of time, and you're just gonna burn yourselves out. Don't do that. That's not good for you. That's not good for the organization. That's not good for Becky either. She doesn't want to lose good people. Keep the people who are engaged by getting them really focused on the things they do well and understanding what those individuals do well. And that's not just for Becky to figure that out. That's for each of you to figure out amongst your board.
But I think for the longest time, from how I remember it, is that we really thought the committees had to be made up of people that were on the board. And, yeah, and.
I mean,
Yeah.
you might have thought that, but they don't have to.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
right, but that was, yeah, I think that what our understanding was, I mean, because we had made subcommittees when we included
Oh,
other people. So we
okay,
had
like
done some,
Amy was on when she left, she stayed on the, ice. Ice Fest.
yeah, which is a subcommittee
Some-
of emotion, so I think
Right,
that was
right, right.
our understanding from our previous director that we had to have, if we invited.
Well, and take a look at your bylaws, you know,
Yeah,
like, you know, and, you know, there could be something in there that you specified it potentially.
Maybe I better look.
So, and if that's the case, I mean, really to grow your organization, you need more people than just the people here at this table, right?
Yeah.
Because that you're serving the community. So go back and amend those bylaws if it's set up
If it's
that
in
way.
there,
Yeah. And if it's, you know, and if it's really unclear in your bylaws, maybe make it clear, you know, like we want to have, you know, other people, not just board members, so. And I do have some good sample bylaws if you ever need those, so. I always like giving my board members a kit. It's a, you know, nice large folder that has all the important things in it to help you better function as a board and help you individually know and understand all the aspects of the organization. This is a list of all the things that I would typically put in it. And I don't know if you have that in place yet, but I think that might be something that you look at
We
doing.
did it in Petoskey, so I
Mhm.
thought I had a good one there, so we
Yep.
need to do that.
There's probably something, cause I can probably find mine, when I started, I was given
Okay.
a folder that had a lot of, and not all of these things by any means, but it had a lot of stuff in it, and I think I still have it.
You gave me some.
You know, and as new board members come on, making sure that you're training them along the way, because they need to catch up with the rest of you who've been on the board, right? So it's a constant cycle in making sure. And I think there's other opportunities for, you know, for existing boards that have been around a while to, you know, reaffirm what it is that you're doing, but also like learn other areas of how you can continue to improve your downtown. So model chain of command. I put this in here because it, you know, it always seems like there's sometimes some struggles in terms of like who reports to who and you know, how should this all work, right? But board chair is here to really manage the board of directors in a sense at the table, at those meetings, right? And I always feel that it's very important for both the board chair and the vice chair to be, if you have a vice chair position, to partner on some of those duties. So as a board chair is talking with the individual board members and making sure that they have the tools and knowledge that they need to be able to be at the meetings, right? You don't want to be talking about things outside of a board meeting that are actionable items, but it's about really more functional, like how are we functioning, making sure that they're following up on tasks or commitments that they've promised, right? And then that direct relationship between the board chair and the executive director. And then if the executive director has staff,
The executive director was part-time.
right, exactly. So, you know, the executive director is overstaffed. The board is not overstaffed. The board is, you know, directly hires the executive director. And then committee chairs, having committee chairs in place that are then managing those members of those committees. And the volunteers that are part of it. As responsibilities as a committee, you know, just holding regular meetings is important. Not only having a chairperson, but also a secretary to be able to take those minutes or notes. Doesn't have to be Becky taking minutes and notes. It can be somebody else taking minutes and notes. Helping you out.
That's
Becky.
true. Yeah.
Right? No, and it's just, it's more hands, right? Help make the work happen. So, making sure that they're reporting up to the board and having consistent reports to the board. Committees typically, you know, will be meeting 3 to 5 hours a month, and then probably working on things outside of out of the committee, level.
I think that was important on the other one is to realize like, there, I saw it was like, 8 to 10 hours to commit it to the board.
Yes.
And I think that that's important that a lot of you are aware that that's at a minimum.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's what it takes,
Yeah.
really, to be active and to really make a difference.
Been in the past, it was our director was doing a lot of things without us doing too much. And I feel like now it's changed and we have stepped up, but, yeah, I think that's just important. It's important when we have new members who are interested in joining to make that sense.
So I'm just gonna interject here, but I've always taken that this maternal side to me, and I know how busy the business owners are, and I've always taken on a lot. So if we're gonna get this balance going, you're gonna have to watch me too, because I will be more,
Absolutely.
We're gonna
I
have to
will
send
take it
you,
on, I will do it.
we'll have to
and-
send you home.
But I think that,
I don't mean that as much, but I will, maybe I will delegate to.
No, I absolutely,
Yeah.
you know that I understand that as well. But I think that that's, where we need to make sure that everyone is, if people aren't doing something, that like, hey, could you do this? Could you take this on? And I think that that's something that's important that we need to look at going
That's
forward.
not a strength of mine,
It's not a strength of mine either. It's easier just to do it yourself.
But
Exactly.
realistically,
I mean, who needs to sleep?
we are the board that decided that this was a part-time position.
No,
So
absolutely.
that's how we really need to look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think that, if that's how we feel going forward, then we need to
Mhm.
make sure that everyone is pulling their weight and, it's not, I don't expect people to learn how to do things they don't know how to do, but at the same time, if there is something that you feel like you can help, then everyone needs to stand up and
Mhm. Yeah.
jump up and do it.
And I will say, every executive director that I know, that, they are a type A personality and they will
100%.
just get it done. Because, I will also say there are many times that a volunteer, has all the greatest intentions and just doesn't, complete something.
Or
And
they
then
don't
you're
know
like,
how to help. They don't know
Right,
how to get involved. I
exactly,
mean, I feel
right.
like that was the first year I was on the board. I didn't know how,
Yep.
I could come and plant flowers, but I didn't know how else to help.
Yeah, exactly. And have those conversations at the board meeting. What kind of volunteers do we need to do this? Ask that question. If Becky's not telling you what that is, ask her the question, what she thinks, but then also, I mean, you guys have great brains. I think you kind of know what it takes to do some of this stuff. But lay out like what volunteer roles are needed in order to complete the projects and the programs that you have in place. It's also important that as a committee meets, is that you are really respecting other people's viewpoints, and especially at the board level. Give the time for someone to share their viewpoint, and acknowledge that. I can't remember, somebody said that, God gave us one mouth and 2 ears, and it means that we listen more than we talk, right? And that is an important part of communication, is listening. And then, really kind of considering that as to how does that play into the actions that you're doing? So, committee chair, this is kind of a little bit of a snippet from a job description. So I kind of put that in place. If you were in the Main Street program, they actually really encourage creating job descriptions for your committees and your,
responsible for
and for
boards and
your,
everything.
exactly. So, those are things that you can even do just for the board itself. It's a separate description to help identify, here's what's expected of you and the opportunities that are before you. Another thing that committees or that boards have done that I do recommend is a pledge of commitment. It helps to reaffirm what I'm committing to as a board member, and just itemizing those things and kind of how you expect them to operate, and how you expect that respect at the board level as well. I do recommend also doing action plans for your goals and objectives. So if you have, say, 5 goals that you want to achieve this year, let's talk about how do we achieve that? What are the things we need to do to get in place? And then you can also then itemize how many volunteers are needed to do that. how much budget is needed to do that. And then I always include core values. So I don't know if you've gone through a process yet of strategic planning and looking at your mission, your vision statement, your core values. But core values goes back to what do you make decisions on and how you're making decisions. So if, say, diversity is a core value of yours, is what you're doing adhering to being diverse, right? Or is it not? So maybe you shouldn't be doing that.
So Christina has used that at the MDA to a great degree, let's just say. She's really good at that. And she spends a lot of time tracking it and done excellently.
Yeah, and I think that as a chair, that's like one thing that I always kind of go back to. I'm like, what are we doing as a board in our committees? Are we hitting upon the things that we need to do in order to move forward? Or are we just sitting around having conversations every day? So, you know, but again, type A personality, I want to get stuff done.
At the same time, we get, you know, we get people who are like, have great ideas but it's like, it's not necessarily what we're doing right now, or it's like,
Right.
we need to
Yes.
yes, these are
Priorities.
awesome ideas, but like just the idea coming up now is not something we can execute for this summer season.
Right.
But we can look into, so we need to kind of
Yep.
table it.
Yep, developing your priorities.
Yeah, and you know, there's definitely room for great ideas and new ideas. We want all of them. That's, you know, why we want new
And that
people
could be in the
involved.
development plan, we just haven't been able to.
Get there yet, because we have to
Get there
get past
Mhm.
XYZ to get,
Yeah.
move forward here.
Well,
We have to go
one
in
thing
order.
in particular.
Yeah, we have to move forward.
I do see that I'm running over a little bit, so I'm gonna just kind of speed through the last little part of this, and then we can open it up to more questions. You know, the process to stewardship, you know, you are stewards of this community. That's kind of the top level, where it's like you have the care and responsibility to manage the downtown. And know that volunteers are working through that process. People in your community could be working through this process. They may be apathetic to what you're doing, but could you get them engaged? Can you get them empowered? These are the steps to become stewards. In getting other people involved, again, it's really important to tell your story and identify potential prospects of who could be engaged and involved. Grow that network. More hands, you know, around the table, we're gonna be able to, you know, get through that food pretty quickly. So we gotta get more people engaged and involved. And, you know, selling your success stories. You know, volunteers want to hear like a personal success story. Like, what are you getting from it as a volunteer? And, you know, be able to share that with them, because then they can identify that as to how they could potentially become involved. I think the hardest part, the reason why a lot of people don't volunteer is that they're like, I can't make an impact. I don't know what I'm going to be able to do. Tell your one story as to what you're doing. And developing an elevator pitch is really great. Just short little sweet sentence as to, you know, what you're here to do and what the organization does, right? And don't be afraid to shout it from the rooftops either in terms of the successes. Love that quote. And, you know, educating more stakeholders. Just make sure that you do have that elevator pitch ready. You know, don't dwell on the negatives. There's always going to be negatives. People love to complain and focus on that. I don't know what it is about humans that we don't like to focus on positives. I really don't. But I think as a board, you need to focus on those positives. That's what helps to really raise the bar, to raise all ships, right? And this very quickly, and really for the benefit of Becky, so that you know how important Becky is. But she is the leader, the glue, the expert for downtown management, and really she's probably going to be your biggest volunteer. So, but know that it takes a lot to be in this position, And there's a lot of knowledge and years of experience that she brings to the table to help you get what you need to get done for the DDA. As directors, we wear many, many hats, and she looked at this and I think she's like, I need to be like full-time and have more staff. She's like, oh my gosh. But yeah, and you know, I think just more of the fun of it is looking at some of those roles in a different perspective. Perspective, you know, she's the communicator, she's the instigator, she's gonna get you moving on things, right? She's gonna be empowering you to help you get things done. And you know, really the hostess was with the mostest. She's always
the bar very high, dear.
I know what you can do, but, and then the rest of it is, you know, for Becky's purposes, you know, like, you know, best practices in managing boards. And a couple things that are in there. Do you have a purchasing policy that's separate from the city, or is it the city's?
I'm learning that.
Okay, okay, yep. So everyone's a little
Oh,
bit
no,
different.
it's not separate. It would be the same, but
It's
I'm
the same.
still learning that.
And, you know, and some do it a little bit differently. So, and it's always worth kind of that look as a board to look at what that policy really is, and does it make sense for this authority? It doesn't mean you don't have to follow the cities, but there could be aspects where you need to have your own. And I know for like Dearborn, we definitely had our own. Ferndale, we didn't. So almost done. There is a number of things that I find very helpful for managers. It's a toolbox of kind of all the organizational aspects of an organization, from organization to design to communications. And I left those in here so that you guys can kind of look through it and figure out what are things that you might still need to build as part of your overall toolbox. It's not just the manager's toolbox. It is the whole board's toolbox to make sure that you're a good functioning organization. So I'm not going to read through those, but there's some design ones there, events and promotions. And then also looking at your marketing, communications, and volunteer management. And then other resources. So, you know, great that you're already partnering with other organizations here, but then, you know, take a look at the entire state in terms of other organizations. And what I will say is, you know, the Michigan Downtown Association is a membership organization made up of other downtowns just like you. They choose to be a part of that association, and the association is volunteers like me and like Becky, who are really pulling together resources and information to be able to provide everybody a platform to grow from. And sharing those experiences is like the best, because you know, you're not in it alone. You might feel like it sometimes, but there are other communities going through the same issues and struggles as you, and to reach out to those other communities and talk about those things. So, and, you know, kind of last but not least, you know, just be ready for change, be nimble, because it's always happening. You know, nobody expected COVID to happen. Guess what? We gotta act quick. And, you know, really the moment we stand still, the world will pass us by. So keep moving. And, you know, most of all, have some fun. Yes, have fun. Because, you know, you spend a lot of time together, you know, and you're dealing with sometimes difficult decisions or issues that come forth. But to really build a good team, you've got to have fun together. You got to laugh together. Sometimes you got to cry together, and just know that you know, it is, you know, like teamwork makes the dream work. It really does. So, any questions?
Very important. That's a lot. There's a lot to take in.
It's amazing. That's really, I mean, I feel like everyone should listen to that.
Right.
But I feel like, you know, the rest of our board needs to hear it as well. I think it's really helpful.
leaving the PowerPoint with us, that'll be extremely, and I know you
Yeah.
are, but that'll be extremely helpful to
Yeah.
just build from. So. Thanks for
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
And then the material to give to prospective board members.
Yes.
So they understand the commitment they're making and
Yes.
the role they play. And because, I mean, right now that doesn't I mean,
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and I was
I
gonna say,
did.
you recorded this, correct?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
so
Right.
send that out to them and say,
Exactly.
you have to listen to this before the next board meeting.
right.
Yeah. I think it's helpful. I think even if it's, 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, I think it's helpful to listen to, I think it's great.
We should have a recap on this as,
Well, we said we have it recorded, so we're gonna
Right,
have everyone.
but we should discuss it very briefly in our next board meeting.
Absolutely. I think it's beneficial. I think it's beneficial. It's beneficial because it'll be posted for the public to hear all this as well, to have a better understanding.
And know our role. Yeah.
Yeah, and, I think, thank you for the opportunity to be able to kind of speak with and meet all of you. I look forward to being a part of this, maybe in about like 8 years.
6 to 8.
Cause I'll be like you, I'll be bored and I'll be like, okay, I gotta go and do something. So.
Well, you're already nominated to be on the board. When you move here, we'll just make sure the mayor at the time.
If I may, I just want to expand or clarify something that Christina had said about the chairs in the Open Meetings Act. So our committees are, they don't have the ability to make budgetary decisions or governance or policy decisions. So they don't have to follow the same standards. There are some committees that are set up that have the power to make decisions and to make budgetary decisions. So they have to strictly adhere to the OMA Act. But the way we set up our committees is so they don't have any power to make any kind of those governance decisions. So just want to clarify that they're not subject to the same OMA standards because they don't have those powers. But if you do set up a committee where you were to set up a committee and say, all right, committee, you can go, here's a budget, you can decide how to spend that money, and then they would have to adhere to the same exact rules.
And that's how they did it in Pachowski as well. You had to post the parking committee, because the parking committee had fiduciary responsibility with the events committees and marketing and that.
And, and everybody's a little bit different, and, if it, let's say, do you have like a design committee?
Not yet.
Okay, so let's say you had a design committee that helped, to facilitate, a decision that would be brought to the board for granting dollars. You would definitely need to adhere to that because they're making a formal recommendation that obviously needs a secondary approval level, but they're already saying this is approved by our standards, to be able to grant somebody dollars, so.
And also, so a lot of our committees too, and this is just citywide, because we have limited staff, a lot of the committee members actually do what staff normally would be doing, so it's really a staff function, so like, we have committees deciding just because we don't have enough staff members to do it, so they're really not doing governance, not making governance decisions, they're helping out staff.
They're managing.
Yeah, they're helping managing, because we just don't have, Cora or Jody, everyone here is Gail volunteers so much, that normally a staff person in other bigger communities would be doing that work.
Yeah.
I got a tech person, I got a walking person.
Tree walking person. Huh.
The maintenance person.
All right, good. Other thoughts or questions?
Public comment?
Yes.
Excellent. May.
I'd like to just run through a few things really quickly and just maybe get some yeses and nos, just for our own edification. I think one of the very first things that happened when everybody announced that you were coming in is that you didn't share with the announcement that you have a background in this town. And I think that the community and reaching out to everyone to show that we're not bringing in outsiders, but we're working with insiders is very helpful. So you might think about how powerful that is. In terms of deterioration, does the DDA have more teeth than the city in terms of buildings that are falling in disrepair?
I wouldn't say more teeth, but more carrots.
Okay.
there is, generally the ability to have influence over properties because of the relationship.
Okay,
And I think that's really, what it boils down to is that, this board, the director that's in place is getting to know those property owners, right? And really establishing a long-term relationship with them.
Just within the CBD though, correct? Not
Within your
necessarily-
DDA, yeah, within your DDA.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, so, generally, if the DDA is seeing that there is like maybe a trend that's happening amongst businesses, or properties, there might be something that needs to be considered, at an ordinance level that then could be enforced. Trying to think, but really long time ago, when I started in Ferndale, there was a problem with businesses keeping their front doors open. They were using their back doors because all parking was in the back, right? And then the fronts started looking like basically their storage units in the front, which was unattractive. To that big strip, nobody wanted to walk down there and look at storage, right? So we actually put into one of the ordinances that the front door needed to be maintained and remain open and maintained. And then enforcement, I mean, that was a whole other thing, is then enforcing that, right? We only get 2 enforcement officers and, they're enforcing grass and weeds and all sorts of other things, right? So, we even had the conversation as, well, maybe we need to deputize the executive director to be able to enforce some of these things. Well, before going to that extent, it became more of a mission to communicate, build that relationship, build the understanding as to what was their challenge in keeping that door open, and then coming up with ideas and plans for them to gradually shift that. But at the same point, you gotta keep that thing in mind.
yeah, that's a good example. Can a TIF, could a new TIF be, started without the county, or is it
No.
only? Is it a county, city share?
You have to do all that public notification. And they have to be notified, they can opt out. And submit their notification of opting out. They can come to the public hearing process and opt out at that point in time. At public hearing, they can submit a letter in terms of opting out, or they can basically say, we're all in, and just kind of take a back seat and just watch the process.
All right.
Yeah.
This cataclysmic, kind of, thing. So there's a shopping center in Petoskey where Hobby Lobby is, and it's mostly empty. Would that be considered a property for something like that?
Could be. I don't know where the
you
DDA
did
property
already-
was at. No, I know where you're talking about, but I don't know.
It's not
I don't know.
DDA.
It's
No,
not
it's not
DDA.
DDA.
So it probably isn't anywhere close to the DDA.
No, it's not even contiguous, so I guess from that point, but if it were in a DDA, something like that, yes.
Right.
Mhm.
So,
And it would be like an area where, like, I'm seeing like a large property that's vacant, I'm working with that property owner to figure out like, what can we do to get somebody in there, right? What do we need to do to turn this around? Is it a space, like, that's a large space, is that a space that maybe needs to be redeveloped because it's just not working anymore? I can tell you, when I drive back, and I drive back. Can't tell you how many of the strip centers with the outlet stores. And that is just a trend that's happening everywhere. The malls, the strip centers, they're all going, all the businesses are going away from them because guess what? Downtowns are where it's at. They want to be in the downtowns where the people are.
so the Brownfield Act, the cause of a lot of the deterioration of the downtown was due to the box stores. But now you're saying that the shopping centers are suffering because you guys are driving back into the downtown.
And I think there's a bigger thing happening just, nationally. when you're looking, and, you know, I see it very clearly in Michigan, but I think nationally, retail has completely changed, right? And it's been changing for many, many years, but COVID kind of put it into high drive. And if your business isn't online and doing business online and out the back door as well as out the front door, your business is probably doomed, it's ancient, right? You know, it's going to, you're losing to all the other competitors out there. And you know, people are just shopping differently now.
Shopping local,
They're shopping
I get a
local, they're
lot of
looking
that.
for experience.
opposed to like wanting to go to a
Right.
outlet mall and
Yeah.
buy a gift from somewhere that they don't know, they wanna come and support. I mean,
What
that's
the
a way.
boxes did to the downtowns, they say years ago, now the internet is doing to the boxes.
To the boxes,
So,
yeah.
It's still all.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's just the consumer trend now. And I think that's where downtowns can capitalize on the fact that people are looking for experiences. No better place than in a downtown.
So does Harbor Springs, to you guys, does Harbor Springs have perfect internet?
Perfect internet? No, not really. But that might be my little condo.
I mean, I think that for my experience downtown, I think that the providers are the problem. And I don't think that they have capitalized on the fact that there's like two available providers and you're stuck going with one or the other. And one of them, excuse my language, is always gonna suck. I mean,
Right.
I've gone back and forth between AT&T and Spectrum and I don't have a.
So can the DDA help that problem?
I think that the part of it too is the influx for. You know, we have really great internet in the dead of winter.
Yeah, right.
And we have and it's just the broadband,
Yeah,
stuff like
capacity.
the capacity that what can go through the lines is a huge issue. I mean, same with your cell data anywhere in the area in the summertime, like it's really
So
hard sometimes to get
We
something.
need to increase it.
Yeah,
But-
so I mean, I think that's
As a
Something we
power
experience.
of the board, yes, it's something that you could invest in, but you know, obviously that's not something you can do alone. That's something that you need to be working with those providers to figure out, like.
how they can understand the demand change.
Yeah.
I believe there was a broadband initiative, all in Emmett County, in 2015-ish with Rachel Smolinski. She was, and they were, I mean,
Well, because they do have TrueStream now that's available to anyone who has. But that's not, we're
not
out,
downtown.
it's not downtown. That's where it changes, where
That's the
your
problem.
electrical provider is.
I think the idea is that a lot of people are working from home. So you could come up for an entire week and work. But if you have, if you have questionable, internet, you might go, I'm just gonna have to stay home.
Or for-
and work.
You know, for our cash registers. And
Right,
the POS
exactly.
system, they rely on it, so if that goes down and, you know, everyone's trying to cash out of the pier, where I've got a line of people. You know, I've tried doing backup with data, but that doesn't work necessarily either. Because if it's too much for the internet to handle, it's too much for the data to handle. Luckily, it's only happened a handful of times.
It is,
People
you
are
have
very
to have,
patient,
you have to
but I
have
mean-
secured networks, but it doesn't.
In a restaurant, that is how your order is getting to the kitchen. And that is like how your drink order is getting to the bar. That is how people are cashing out. I mean, it is, I've worked in restaurants for a long time as well. And that is, when that happens, like you are going back to, like, you're relearning a system on the fly with a full restaurant with maybe 200 people waiting for dinner and you're handwriting orders.
And it happened to us one year, and that
I
only
remember
one year.
It happened to us at Tap 30 a bunch.
So if anybody's ever tapped into your network and they're just walking by the pier, that's the network they pick up.
Mhm.
And everything just froze.
Mhm.
And it's so, there's a, you know, when it comes to the IT part of it also.
Yeah, it's a big lesson learned, right? You know.
Yeah.
having that
I mean,
security.
how do you feel about your internet? Like,
Well, TrueStream came out to Birchwood and delayed all the wires but they're not doing anything with them.
really?
It's the weirdest thing you've ever seen. I mean, it's not. So, but anyway, back to your thing about the front door and the back door. I mean, if there was something that would engage everybody's interest, it would be to promote some sort of a collaboration and partnership with your local IT people to get this fixed all year round.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it would be a cool thing for the DDA to do, and it'd be a cool committee to be on, you know?
Yeah.
And then we could get, right?
Agreed, but.
I got it down. I don't know, I'm sure that it's not, my fear is it's not the first time that they have heard that. And I don't know, I mean,
I
I
think
don't know.
Nikki could give us a little bit more
Okay.
background on
Okay.
what happened with the broadband initiative that we had
yeah,
in place, because it was kind of like the airport board. I mean, it was all in Emmett County, and all of the
Right.
players.
I think
We're
they
there and
feel
it-
like they solved it,
Well,
and that's why it just kind of went away, but it's not solved. It's not even
but the
solved.
question is,
Yeah.
I think it's very, very important for us to say, yes, you can come here and work from home,
Right.
even on July 3rd. I mean-
tends to be the worst time
Exactly.
when it goes down.
And that's
For us at
when,
least.
obviously, that's
Yeah.
when people if they want to take extended vacations, they want to be able to work.
So we were approached in the city in 2019 to be our own internet provider with fiber, but that was multi-million-dollar project that we would have to, so we have to get all the lines in and to be basically to provide internet.
Just like TrueStream was,
Just like TrueStream.
yeah.
And at that time, we didn't want to, we didn't have the money to start that, and you have to have the staff and everything. It's just like being just like an electric department. That's the only way, I think, because we can't control Spectrum, we can't control AT&T, we complain to them too about Wi-Fi here and everything. So that's really the only ways if we, I think in this area, security is if we control it ourselves, but that's. I won't say it's the only way, but it seems to be like the most feasible way. But.
And you're talking a minimum of like $5 million,
Oh,
right?
yeah, it'd be,
It's,
I mean, to get through to our city, yeah, it would be.
so it'd be interesting if somebody wanted to actually contract that, that
And for
make
us-
an investment and make money off of
Well,
it by.
that's the thing.
That's
For
why I
us,
just wrote down.
It was like, how much money would the city invest and how long would it take for us to have? a
To
return on
recoup
investment?
that, yeah.
You know, to make it worthwhile for the taxpayer, because it'd be taxpayer money we invest.
Right.
And so that's just like with our electric department, we started that 120 years ago, so we definitely got a return on investment.
I think that Christina, you're on a time schedule. I know you have a board meeting.
Oh, yeah.
and, you know,
We gotta go grab some lunch before.
You
our
have to
board meeting,
grab
because
your
we're not meeting
lunch.
us.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
This is
welcome.
so.
Thank
so much
you
information.
very,
Yeah,
very
thank you very
much.
much.
Been
Much
amazing.
appreciated.
Look forward to tomorrow,
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
our tour today.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scale and Core are attending the meeting,
Oh, good, good.
Yes. Mhm.
and there are
So-
spots open if any of the rest of you
Yeah.
have the day, so.
Should be excellent. So let's adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Good.